For the Wednesday panel, late debate co-host Liz Storr is in Sydney and columnist Justin Smith joins us in Melbourne. Evening to you both. Can I start with you, Justin? Let's talk about Dan Andrews. He's now the country's highest paid premier and he is getting a pay rise when a lot of Victorians in Victoria who had to live under his lockdowns during COVID are not. His salary is now $481,000, up by $16,000. There was some noise about, donating things to charity. I don't think anyone's going to do that. Does he deserve a pay rise?
No. No, I don't think he does. And I don't think any of them do, because it's not just him. I would even say people who are Dan Andrews supporters who think he does a good job and have backed him to the hilt. I would even say that they'd be looking at this, because it's all politicians. It's the opposition that are going to make out like bandits as well. Everyone. Look, Dan Andrews, for example, I think he's making something like 30% more than he did 6 years ago. Now, you'd have to look at that and say, is the Premier of Victoria 30% better than he was 6 years ago? And I think the answer is probably no. We've got people who are stretching their meals out. They are one rent rise away from getting evicted, and this is just so off the mark. I mean, I cannot believe that the tribunal allowed this to go through. It is just so far away from reality. It's not funny.
Yeah, look, I think Dan Andrews is doing a worse job now than probably, the bad old days of COVID, but he seems to be sort of, parking himself in that office and waiting to get his retirement package. Liz, the other thing he's done this week, I can't believe this. I'm actually writing a column about this for the weekend for the Herald Sun. He's described a Liberal MP, Cindy, I think her name is Cindy McLeish, as a half-wit grub. Now, he did that in Parliament. He was asked to withdraw and had to, but he was asked yesterday and again today, Liz, if he'd actually formally apologise to that Liberal MP, a woman. What do you think would happen to a Liberal male politician or me if I described a woman or a work colleague as a half-wit grub?
Very different story, Steve. I don't recommend you try it. But of course, the media always shows favourable retrospect when they're talking about a Labor politician doing the same. And of course, Dan Andrews seems to have sailed through quite unscathed. We know that she's asked for an apology. He gave a very half-assed one. Everyone knows he didn't mean it. And that's the end of that. Of course, if he was a Liberal, this would start them beating the Liberal Party have a women problem drum, and we wouldn't hear the end of it for the rest of the week. It's double standards. Oh, sadly, we're used to it by now. But in terms of everyone getting this big fat pay rise, I have to remind everyone it was just last month they handed down this terrible deficit. The state's got the biggest debt in the country. And Palace said just last month that 4,000 public servants would be axed in order for the government to save $2.1 billion. And now they're all getting these 35% pay rises. Someone make it make sense.
Yeah, Victorians are paying $10 million a day just on the interest, Justin. This is not the first time, is it, though, Justin, that Dan Andrews has used personal abuse against his opponents? He seems pretty good at it.
I think he's losing it a little bit here, and one of the ones when he took that trip to China, this is sort of personal business for me. When he took that trip to China and didn't allow any local media to go, and it was recently in a speech as well that he was giving where he was slow to release details on that. When he's not allowing free speech anymore, free media or a free press to operate the way he used to. We've seen leaders go down that track before, and I've got to tell you this, it never ends well. I'm a little shocked. I mean, Andrews is like any other leader around the country. I think he's going to get some things wrong, he's going to get some things right. But when you start going down this kind of track, I think it's probably actually time for him to finish up. There's been talk of him retiring, but if he's going to keep going down this track, it probably is time for him to go.